Hello everyone. We are continuing our video series on the modern variation of the Benoni, and now we're in section 2 where we discuss White's more up-to-date and modern approaches to dealing with the Benoni. The first four videos dealt with the classical variation and Black's responses to it. So now we are dealing with White's modern innovations. So, for example, the moves E4, H3, Knight F3, and Bishop D3. Uh, First of all, H3 prevents Black from pinning with the move Bishop G4, as we saw in the classical variation. For instance, after A6, A4, Bishop G4, and exchanging the knight on F3. The bishop coming to D3 defends the E4 pawn. So it is not easy for Black to create a lot of counterplay against this setup. So Black tends to be a little more passive against the more modern lines. Uh, the move H3 is slow, and in the earlier days of this variation, uh, some masters thought that the tactical below B5 would basically solve Black's problems, a la the Banco Gambit. However, Black never really achieved equality, and so the line became popular. Now, with the knight on F3, basically safe from the pin Bishop G4, White discards the idea of playing knight D2 to C4, as in the knight's tour variation that you see in the classical approach. Instead, he plans on playing Bishop F4, putting pressure on the D6 pawn, and Rook E1. Alright, just seeking to break E5. Now, besides H3 ruling out Bishop G4 and Knight G4, it also allows White to bring his bishop to the safety of H2 in case that bishop is attacked. So now let's look at our first game and to see how Black deals with the modern approach from White. This game took place in San Diego 2006 at the USA Championships, with White Alexander Onishuk and with Black Hikaru Nakamura. D4, Knight F6, C4, C5, D5, E6, Knight C3, E takes, C takes, D6, E4, G6, and here's H3. And you can see now how this bishop is hindered from coming to G4, Bishop G7, Knight F3. And this is what I'm saying, is that now that the knight is anchored here, doesn't have to worry about a pin. White changes his tune on bringing this knight over here. Castles, Bishop D3, just adding extra support to the E-pawn. And now A6. Another idea here is Knight H4, Knight H5, which prevents the bishop from coming to this square. Another idea Black can use is Rook E8, putting additional pressure here, and say after castles, then C4. Again, the bishop has to stay on this diagonal as this pawn is attacked, and then this square can be useful to Black. And also help expand on the queen side. And of course, other continuations of Bishop D7 and Knight A6. In the game, after Bishop D3 and A6, the standard A4 was played. Nakamura continued with Knight BD7, castles, Rook E8, Rook E1, Queen to C7, and now Bishop F4. Black continues developing, And his idea is just to simply put the bishop here on b7 and connect the rooks. Now, black's position is very solid, albeit passive. The bishop on b7 is nothing to write home about, but it does put a little bit more pressure on d5. And since white plans e4, e5, it helps to have as much pressure on d5 as you can get. Traditionally, when b5 is, preparing rook b8, preparing b5 with rook b8, ran into trouble. There's a game, Karpov-Temin, from their candidates match in 1990, and the natural looking rook b8 to prepare this move ran into trouble after bishop c4. Karpov's idea was to simply support this pawn, d5, so he can prepare to push. Alright? The other idea is it stops the thematic c4 move by black. So Temin played knight b6, driving away this bishop. But now the knight is in a bad spot because it's blocking the advance of the b pawn. Okay. The knight h5, bishop h2, knight e5. The bishop simply drops back to e2. And then if knight takes, check, bishop takes, and knight f6, then white is fully ready for the e5 advance. D takes and d6, which is thematic. Okay, and this is going to be followed, of course, by bishop takes e5. Okay, with the big advantage. So in this position, Nakamura played b6, preparing bishop b7, queen d2, bishop b7, bishop c4, and now Anatoly Karpov in his notes says that the natural looking rook a d1 allows this move c4. And basically what black is doing here is giving up the d4 square in exchange for being able to play knight to c5. Okay. So bishop c4 is played here by Anashuk and stops that idea. Nakamura plays knight h5 now. Bishop h2. This maintains the pressure here and brings the bishop to safety. Another interesting alternative is just the natural bishop h6 trying to exchange the dark square bishops. And of course you have to ask yourself who benefits from the exchange. So after bishop takes h6, queen takes h6, knight f6, knight d2, excuse me, rook e7, and bishop e2. White really wasn't able to show any kind of advantage, and this was from a correspondence game back in 2000. Now, instead of bishop e2, white could have maybe tried to be more aggressive with f4. And then after rook a e8, queen h4, right? With this move getting ready to be played, this seems a little bit more challenging for black. But then at the same time, there's really no there's in other words, white can't play e5 here, but it's hard to see how black can stop the further preparation of e5 here. So for instance, if this rook came here and this rook came here, okay, so that seems promising there for white. So instead of playing bishop takes h6, just simply preserving the bishop to h8 is probably the best move there. All right, and what this does is, again, black's a little passive, but white can't really do anything. So basically, this position is one of those positions where black just has to accept his lot right now and kind of be real solid and kind of wait. If he tries to get too aggressive, then the tides can turn in white's favors. But as long as he plays conservatively and just plays solidly, it's the onus is on white to prove something in the position. So, although it seems contrary to Benoni logic, against these modern approaches, against at least this one, black can't really afford to uh, get too aggressive. Okay, now in the classical approach, yes, maybe you can play more dynamically, but against the modern approach, you have to be careful not to overstep. So let's get back on it. Back to the game. So bishop c4, knight h5. The bishop came to h2. Nakamura played h6. Okay. And Anashuk played g4, which seemed real committal. Perhaps he felt that black didn't really have any counterplay, and now it was time to strike. Now, maybe just rook a d1. Okay, because black's position is pretty passive, so white could afford to make this kind of move. So white chooses to go for the space, knight g4, g4, knight f6, and now he does rook a d1, h5. So here's the drawback, right, of g4 is now black gets a little counterplay now. Okay, g5, knight h7 from Nakamura, bishop g3, rook e7. Of course, this rook is coming. Rook to e2, rook a e8, rook d1. Notice the struggle on both sides to prevent e5, and the other side is trying to push e5. Bishop c8. So notice again, this bishop, has a real humble role in this game. Now, Anashuk plays king h2. And that was a mistake. Queen d3 is preferable here. Hitting this pawn. Because it's not clear what black can do here. Alright? Besides severely weaken his queen side after b4. Right? And then again, if he tries to move the queen, then what about this pawn? So it seems like black would be in trouble if queen d3 was played there. Instead, Anashuk played king h2, and then Nakamura played b5. Very thematic. And now watch what happens to the black pieces. e5. This was Anashuk's idea. And Nakamura just simply played the move h4. Okay. Your problem is although there are two pieces on this pawn, they're overloaded, right? They have to deal with this this e5 square. So bishop f4, and now if bishop takes h4, right? Now since this bishop is off the d6 line, b takes c4, e takes, and then just queen b8 can be played. Okay, and if knight takes h4, then just simply knight takes e5, and white is gonna lose some material. This is why Anashuk played bishop f4, knight takes e5, bishop takes e5, and then queen d7. I like this move right here, just lining up against his pawn. Bishop takes g7, queen takes h3, king g1, queen g4 check, king h2, queen h3, king g1, bishop g4, knight h2, bishop takes, king takes g7, e takes, rook e5, f4, rook came to e3, king h1, a takes, knight takes, rook g3, bishop came to f1, rook takes e1, queen takes e1, and now queen to f5, and now queen d2 by Anashuk. And Anashuk does a great job defending here. What I want to point out is that how white pretty much made like one mistake in the position, and then black's pieces just exploded, and with dynamism. And that's really what the Benoni is about at its core, is playing very dynamic with the black side, and white, for his matter, is just trying to calm the storm and basically keep black from being active as possible. And that's the real crux of these modern variations by white. H3, again, trying to keep the bishop from coming to knight f3. Bishop f4, you know, these type of moves, rook e1, they're all designed to just hold a nice solid position and kind of slowly keep black held down. But what often happens is that white makes some type of positional error, and then all of a sudden the tension, uh, in the black position from being, held back for so long just simply explodes. And we saw that with this move g4, which wasn't a big error, but it just gave black just enough to start some counterplay. And then you seen the move king h2, and then boom, b5, the pawn sack, and then everything just broke loose in the position for black. So after queen d2, queen e4 check, bishop g2 was played, queen b1, and although Naka had a great attack on the king, eventually this game ended in a draw by perpetual. But this game was a great example to show white's ideas in the classical, not the classical, in the modern variation, and how black can become passive. But don't lose hope, and don't Don't get over anxious to try to break out, because that's a psychological thing. When you're passive in the position, your human instinct is want to break open or do something. Okay, and look how Naka played in that game. He played real quiet. He played B6. He played Bishop B7. He played H6 when it was appropriate, and he just kept his position real solid. Then at the right time, he brought his bishop back to C8, and then when his opponent gave him opportunity, then he jumped on it. So that was the lesson with this next section of how to play the modern Benoni. Hope you enjoyed that. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next lesson.